If you know anything about Advance OU, you will know that it is universally agreed upon that Tyranitar is the best Pokemon in the tier. If you know a little more about Advance OU, then you will probably know that its defining set is the Dragon Dancer, and it is the most threatening sweeper in the tier. Every team must be able to check it, or that team is unviable. This article about Tyranitar in Advance reflects this consensus. It's from 2013, but it's not fully outdated because the fundamentals of Advance have been around for a while. I'll leave the link to it in the description. It's a good read. So today, I am not going to suggest that the status quo be flipped on its head and DD-Tar go from #1 threat to unviable Pokemon we should probably stick in UU. Fun as that would be. But I have been rather frustrated with DD-Tar for some time, and I wanted to express some frustrations with it because I see a lot of somewhat random DD-Tars on offense teams that are kind of looking to sweep without being truly supported, and T-Tar's issues have become more and more glaring to me. So I wanted to really highlight what Tyranitar needs to succeed and how it can be frustrating to try and achieve that sometimes, especially if you are a perfectionist like me, and that is not a good quality. Well, it is, but it can definitely be harmful. Anyway, let's get going. So, I am going to steer away from gimmicks when talking about DD-Tar. Like, yes, I know that DD-Tar can run Endure Salic or Ditch Earthquake and run Fire Blast, HP Grass, and other stuff like Substitute, but I'm going to be sticking with the standard. So DD-Tar is a threat no matter what. It would be a threat with DD, Rock Slide, Earthquake, no item, and no fourth move. However, it can run an item and a fourth move, and those help make it even more threatening. So the standards for that fourth move are Hidden Power Bug. It should not be in the usually useless moves category. And that is because it hits Claydol, one of the few Pokemon that resists the Quake Slide combination. It also hits Celebi, who can be very obnoxious, and is actually kind of a decent backup DD-Tar check if it lacks HP Bug. So there's that. Also hits Flygon decently, although it's not going to get very far against bulky sets, but against offensive variants, it'll hit it hard. So then there is the next best, or the next most common option, next most standard, I guess, would be Hidden Power Grass. That is solely because Swampert is generally the safest counter to this set. Technically, Flygon, especially bulky sets, is more resilient against it because it's immune to Earthquake, immune to Spikes, and doesn't really mind HP Bug at all. But it also fits onto less teams, whereas Swampert fits onto basically every team. So Swampert is generally the best out-and-out check to this set, and that's why a lot of people run HP Grass, solely for other Swampert, and it is that big a deal. The other moves are Ice Beam. Defensive Flygon teams were quite popular for some time, and DD Ice Beam rose up to smack them. And it is also good because it hits Claydol quite hard. Not quite to a KOing, but it'll do a good chunk. And it's also nice to be able to OHKO Salamence with Ice Beam, no matter how many times it intimidates you and without fear of missing. Although that's more of a side benefit, it's mostly for Flygon. And the last option is Double Edge, which hits Swampert harder than Earthquake by a significant margin. Don't use Return, you gotta use Double Edge, you gotta go all the way. Return is half-assed, hits the grounds really hard. Swampert, Flygon, and Claydol. Yeah, so that's what that does. Generally a harder hit against stuff like Celebi too, and Waters. Neutral stuff, it's its strongest move. It's why Aerodactyl also uses Double Edge. That and lack of a better move for Aero, but for Tar it is sometimes the best choice. So those are the 4 moves. As for item, Leftovers was the standard. Nowadays it's very rare you won't see DD Tar with Lumberry. That has really become the new standard. And Lychee Berry is also an option, but today we're going to be sticking with Leftovers and Lum, mostly. As for EVs, Well, it's got a lot of options. You want attack so you're strong, you want speed so you're fast after a dance, and you want bulk because that allows you to take the big hits necessary in order to get those dances and also to finish things off. So if you don't OHKO something, you can still live its hit and 2-hit KO it. Nature, you either go adamant or plus attack, because if you're running HP Grass or Ice Beam, it is an option, although not required, to run a minus defense nature, either minus defense or minus special defense, usually minus special defense. So you actually hit your targets as hard as you need to, especially with the abundance of Protect on Swampert to make your HP Grass struggle to 2-hit KO sometimes. Or you can go plus speed, so same idea, but you need to outrun certain targets. So what is my beef with DD Tar if it's so threatening with just these 3 moves and no item? Well, I could start in a lot of places, but I think what I will start with is that, well, it's more of a minor thing than anything else, but with DD Tar, then sometimes it feels like it needs to have its health preserved, because otherwise it's not going to be DD sweeping too reliably. And Tyranitar has a lot of defensive value. I like to switch my Tyranitar in a lot and be aggressive with it, and that doesn't lend itself so well to DD. Because if you're never using DD in scenarios like that, then why have it? That's just more of a gripe or personal preference, but I do think it can be relevant, especially because, I guess we'll start with the items then. Without Lumberry, you can't do it over and over, which is fine depending on the team, but it also limits the amount of times you can switch into stuff in general, because you really want Lumberry. Gengar Will-O-Wisp is a big deal, Toxic's everywhere on things like Jirachi, and Zapdos, Thunderwave on Zapdos, and even something you're supposed to be scaring, like not just Zapdos, but also Blissey. You can't really switch into those without Lum, and in Blissey's case, then you can't really switch in much at all, so I prefer a more immediately aggressive T-Tar. I guess I'll also mention DD Focus Punch as an option, but that's also, while it's not as gimmicky as the other stuff I mentioned, it's also not really standard. But it is an option. Smacks Scarm hard, threatens Blissey trying to status you twice or stuff like that. So there's that. But anyway, that's more of a minor thing. But I guess it's the lack of longevity on the Tar, and for a Tar that's not living too long, then I like mix sets because they are more immediately dangerous, because they have a ton of great super effective coverage with Fire Blast, Ice Beam, HP Grass, and Brick Break. They're hitting everything really hard, whereas Quake Slide and its accompanying move are not as immediately threatening to as many Pokemon. They've got great coverage, but they're not threatening OHKOs and 2-hit KOs on just about everything. And well, you're gonna say, well, what about Dragon Dance? Shouldn't Dragon Dance help you in that? Yeah, so here's the thing. Even with a DD, T-Tar is checked by a lot. And my beef is not even with the last move, because the last move can be kind of whatever. And the issues lie really more in not having enough EVs to do what it wants. It feels to me like T-Tar can never be as fast as it wants, as strong as it wants, and as bulky as it wants, all at the same time. Because if it gives up on any one of those, or rather it needs to give up on one of those in order to be as effective in the other two. And if you try to strike a medium, then it's frustratingly inconsistent for my taste. So, give you an example. So you want speed, right? Let's look at the speed benchmarks first, because as we see from this, the old standard is a classic 200 speed stat. You know, that's cool. That outruns neutral base 100s after a Dragon Dance. So we're talking neutral Salamensis, so DD, a lot of CB sets, some mix sets. Used to be mostly all mix sets, but times change. And Zapdos, and Sub-Flygon sometimes. And mostly that's it, because the metagame's gotten faster. So it used to be this was fine, now not so much. Now the preferred speed benchmark, I mean, it creeps up little by little, but it does creep up. So you need 205 speed minimum, or else you will lose to Timid Moltres. Even if not, shrugging off Will-O-Wisp with Lumberry, that's one thing. Although if you're going to set up in the face of Moltres, you need to outrun it after that first Dragon Dance, or else it'll just Will-O-Wisp you twice. But even just being able to outrun it after dance is important for cases where you cannot get more than one DD and you don't want to get revenge killed. A lot of how offensive teams deal with Tyranitar is revenge killing, and it was not uncommon to see Tyranitar get one dance, take a hit, it can't safely dance again, and then it gets revenge killed by a plus speed 100 Pokemon like Zapdos. Nowadays, you don't really see that anymore because T-Tar decided, hey, that can't happen. That's unacceptable. So I gotta go to this much, 220. Technically, you go 220, but most people just go 221. But it's not acceptable to get outrun by Zapdos like that after a dance. And against Super Rachi and Celebi, who have always been timid, you gotta outrun them. Or mostly Super Rachi, because Super Celebi doesn't bother going to max because it has a 30 speed IV with HP Fire. But Super Rachi is definitely important, and if you're switching into them, like T-Tar often does, you want to be able to Dragon Dance and kill them in one shot, because you're not going to be killing them unboosted. Celebi you might with HP Bug, but you need max attack Adamant, and that's a whole different can of worms. And Super Celebi, or Super Rachi, you're definitely not killing with unboosted Earthquake, even with max attack, so you gotta Dragon Dance and outrun them in one. You're not going to make up for this by pumping bulk either, because you're not going to be strong enough to live 2+1 Celebi Giga Drains. And Super Rachi HP Grass, if boosted, is also going to be too strong unless you're running leftovers, and then you're ruined by status, as we went over before. Not to mention that in the incredibly common scenario where Zapdos stays in on T-Tar because it has to Thunder Wave it, it's the standard for offensive teams now, then you won't be able to Dragon Dance. You'll just have to KO it. And whereas with this speed investment, then you just Dragon Dance and don't lose to getting Thunder Waved. So you really need the speed investment. T-Tar is getting faster and faster. So you might already be beginning to see the problem, because in this, then we've got this bulk investment, which is the minimum to survive Dugtrio. And you've already, let's pretend it's Adamant. Oh, that's 248 too. Let's assume you're going max. Same difference. But this is essentially a Jolly DD-Tar attack stat without the benefits of being Jolly, which isn't all bad, but there are other benefits to being Jolly, because getting revenge killed does not stop at the plus speed base 100s, while bulky Gengar gets slower and slower by the day. So you'll probably be able to outrun them. I should have mentioned that this 205 to outrun Moltres should probably be 206 to outrun bulky Gar, standard bulky Gar after a Wisp. And at this point, you might want to outrun Machamp, which is getting ever more common, and you also might want to run offensive Swampert without a Dragon Dance, especially if you're running HP Grass. So more and more reason to run max speed. And a lot of Milotic and CB Tar and defensive Jirachi and Bold Suicune hang around this range too, so more reason than ever to go this fast. But, so while you'll be outrunning most Gengar, and you'll have Lumberry, so you'll be fine there. And you're still going to get revenge killed by Starmie, and you might think, well, what's the big deal? It's just one Pokemon. On offense, which is where most of the time you're going to be seeing this DD-Tar, because Lum DD-Tar is not going to last on a more defensive team where it needs the leftovers longevity in order to withstand spikes, or else it's just going to get phased in and killed. And so you're going to be running offense, and Starmie destroys offense. So sometimes you are going to want to have that plus speed option, and not being outrun by Swampert, or Endeavor Swampert is also nice, or even before a boost and after a boost if you knock it into Salic and it tries to sub or whatever. And outrunning things like Max Speed Magneton is nice immediately. Immediately outrunning, I mean. And Max Speed Metagross too, so that's nice. But it's mostly the Starmie thing. And you have the benefit of outrunning Adamant Dugtrio after a boost with Jolly. And that's always valuable, although it's not something to count on unless you have calced it earlier in the game. You're like, alright, I'm going to set up with this Jolly Tar, but it's not something to count on in the game. So now you see even more of an issue. If you have this Dugtrio bulk, then you are really not that strong. And Tar already has issues finishing off things like Metagross and weaken Swampert with Earthquake. And that's with more sizable attack investment. So, not to mention the special attack problem, because Starmie is such a threat that sometimes you want HP investment for it. And there is a nice magic HP number of 387, which survives Jolly Dugtrio, Earthquake, and Starmie Hydro Pump. And if you have HP Bug, then your Spit F IVs will drop, so you need to either give... You should probably put 4 Spit F EVs in there to maintain that Starmie benchmark. Otherwise, you need to go up to like 391 or 3 or something. So keep that in mind. But yeah, this is a nice little benchmark, but you can't do it with Jolly, so it's not like you can DD on Starmie safely. And... I mean, you can, but you're not going to kill it without HP Bug, and even then... Look at how weak this is. I mean, no one actually runs this set, but I'm saying look at all the things Dragon Dance Tyranitar has to do at once. See, with Jolly, then this is a not so great roll to KO. 37.5. So some other people might say, well, go for a slower DD Tar and when you DD, you don't DD in front of Starmie, you DD on something else and then DD again on Starmie. So in their world it'd be something like this, which is a little better but still not great, and now you're losing to Adamant Dugtrio. And earlier when I mentioned that you can't really switch T-Tar into anything safely, that counts because of the Dugtrio thing no matter what. Since even if you go Jolly, you're going to get outrun by Dugtrio, right? And even this bulk investment, the second you take a hit, that investment is gone. It is a roll at best. Even if you switch into something as harmless as a Celebi or Metagross HP Fire, it just is gone. You better switch into Psychic, and that's pretty much it. So, because you're not going to be able to shrug it off with leftovers, that HP Fire, because, you know, you need Lum, as we've gone over. So, this kind of half-assed do-everything thing that can still go wrong is the basic reason why I dislike DD Tar. Now, some people are like, you know what, forget the bulk, I'm going max attack, max speed. You know what, fine. I would probably do that right now if I were going to seriously run DD Tar. But that Dugtrio thing, it's so big. And I mean, I can deal with bulkless Tar, but it's... Remember the part where I said at least the non-recovering Tar is at least dishing out immediate damage because of its super effective coverage? Yeah, that's another thing here. This Tar is not immediately dishing out 2 KOs on everything. I mean, it threatens a lot, but it's not nearly as easy to spam as the Ice Beam, Fire Blast, HP Grass, Brick Break set. It really needs that DD, and you know, if you're not DDing safely because you are going to not kill something and get revenge killed, then it begs the question of why are you using DD in the first place? The answer is because you want to break through bulky stuff, but it also struggles against bulky stuff because a lot of Tyranitar checks or DD-Tar checks come together naturally, like Swampert and Dugtrio. You are not going to craft a DD Tyranitar that consistently beats both Swampert and Dugtrio following up. Because Swampert comes in as your DD, even if you HP Grass into it, KO it, you're not going to get a second DD. Boom, Dugtrio finished you off. And you can try and take advantage of it in other ways, but it's still very, very flawed. This is assuming that your DD Tar 2-KO Swampert with HP Grass, that takes some investment, and also lives Dugtrio, so it can't just switch in directly on you, which a lot of Dugtrio do directly because no move besides Earthquake KOs them. And even Jolly Tyranitar Earthquake is only a 50% roll to KO Dugtrio. And yeah, I think you are beginning to see my issue with DD-Tar now. If I'm not clear at any point, just please ask. And I think this is mostly it, honestly, because if you go Jolly, then you have the crippled attack stat again. And Starmie's a big deal. Starmie kills offense. So a lot of time, earlier I mentioned offenses that have a random DD-Tar, so to speak. And it's not really random because it picks up pieces nicely. It does cleave through weakened teams sometimes, and you want to have that Jolly benchmark, but it just bothers me so much when DD-Tar struggles to switch in safely and then gets a DD and either switches out without having done any damage to Metagross, or doesn't kill Metagross and gets killed in return because it can't have Metagross Meteor Mash bulk and a decent attack stat and a decent speed stat. And even that decent speed stat is often not enough with how many teams carry Dugtrio, different varieties. So I think you understand now why I have felt that DD-Tar can be frustratingly inconsistent. Part of it is playstyle, that's for sure true. And you could definitely make the argument that if you get T-Tar in aggressively against Zapdos and start using Earthquakes to soften up Swampert and Metagross, then sure, it can achieve a similar effect. I mean, you're not getting far against Swampert alone, especially defensive Swampert. That's just preying on the offensive Swampert wave, but even then you gotta run away. Because unless you're running HP Grass, and that's going to suddenly make you struggle like hell with not just Claydol, but Celebi. And seeing DD-Tar get revenge killed, so to speak, by Celebi is fairly depressing, whether defensive or offensive. So yeah, I think I've made my point. This is not me saying DD-Tar is bad, it's just I wanted to shed some light on how I see it and how inconsistent it can feel. And yeah, it's more a little in and out of advance that I like to shed light on, and I think about these things all the time, like with the 4th move on CB Gross video, so this kind of thing. So that has been my issue with DD-Tar. I will try to test some stuff on the ladder and see if I can come up with a way to solve my issues, but my preferred way to use Tyranitar involves getting it in and attacking immediately, and the setup of Dragon Dance that can potentially not carry it very far, if anywhere at all, is frustrating. So if I had to pick one set that would be the most consistent against all kinds of teams, I would probably say Jolly DD HP Bug, because you do your job of checking special offense. That's what Tyranitar is often on teams to do, especially Calm Mind stuff. So you can actually beat Celebi and Jirachi after a DD. Mostly Celebi, which is why HP Bug is there as opposed to HP Grass. With how popular offensive Swampert is, then you can Earthquake it and do a lot. And Jolly helps against the Endeavor kinds. Thing is, you're not going to be living Endeavor Swampert without already taking cutting into your already lowered attack stat. So it's very much imperfect in many ways, and that's what frustrates me. But if I had to run one set, then it would be this. I think this is consistent. I would just advise anyone putting it on their teams to really think about how they're using it, because you will not click Dragon Dance to sweep almost ever, like instantly. You will have to significantly weaken Swampert. And when I say significantly, I mean hit it with HP Grass twice. That's how significant it needs to be. Because you know how many games people think, oh, I've got this in the bag with my DD Tar or Ments because I got Swampert down to 25%, and then Swampert protects, and suddenly it's at 50% and you lost. So you need to get it in, like, basically dead range, ideally. And then you have to find a safe spot for it to set up, also not ideal. And that can also be ruined by ever switching it into a move. Like switching into something as innocuous as a Mixmen's Fire Blast, suddenly you might be in range of Brick Break. So yeah, you have to be really, really careful about picking your spots with it, and it doesn't lend itself well to my style, but it definitely can for more aggressive players. And maybe you don't want T-Tar to have clean sweeps. Maybe you just want it to do as much damage to everything as possible. That's fine. But the issue here, of course, with that whole check and Calm Mind offense thing is if you come in on Celebi, then they can go right to Dugtrio and just kill you because you are not Earthquaking a boosted Celebi. And if you Dragon Dance or HP Bug, then you are just dead. And if you're investing into bulk for Dugtrio, then you've got a very crippled attack stat. And yeah, I don't know, maybe Adamant is the way, and you just try to dodge Starmie Hydro Pump or something. Very unreliable, and you can see the picking and choosings. Normally I would say it's team dependent, but I feel like it's tough to cover the things you're trying to cover with your teammates. You know, on a kind of offensive team that DD Tar fits on, then it's tough to cover a Dugtrio weakness or a Starmie weakness or an offensive Calm Mind weakness. And just the fact that you can't really switch Tyranitar in against something even like Snorlax Body Slam without suddenly being in range for those defensive guys. And if you were more readily offensive, then you could switch into that Lax's Body Slam and just immediately dish out damage. But since this set is not as immediately threatening without a boost, then you won't get as far as the mix set. And with the boost, then you have to choose between doing a lot to something and dying, or potentially not doing any damage at all, or just switching out and not having done anything. So I think I've made myself clear. The mix set just dishes out the damage a lot more easily and readily. The DD set does things the mix set never could. Like, it pressures Milotic more than anything else. So Milotic Claydol teams are potentially really in for some trouble. Although it's still not reliable unless you're going absolute max attack with DD Tar, and that has its own issues because if you're going max attack, you still and you cut into your own speed, you're still not going to be bulky enough. It's very, very frustrating. So you see the issue. Anyway, I think I've rambled long enough. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will catch you next time. If you have any questions whatsoever, or even if you just want to call me an idiot for seeing this the wrong way, which I very well could be, then please let me know. But until next time, I will think of some other little advanced OU intricacy to ramble about.